Welcome everyone. Sláinte, already we got a Sláinte from Paul. Thanks, Paul. We're going to talk about Scotch today. We don't get the chance to do that very often. I feel like I can't recall a time where we've really been able to dive in. And the discussions in the group so far with leading up, yeah, here for the Scotch. The discussions leading up to the box release have been really fun. People have been really enjoying talking about Scotch cocktails and, quite frankly, Scotch in general. There were a lot of folks who I feel like that's kind of what Shaker and Spoon is for. People may have misnomers about a particular spirit category, and they are not bashful at about asking questions. And we have an incredible group of people in the group who are always happy to help, which is fun. And today we have 3 additional experts to talk about their particular corner of that world. 2 of them from two of them actually Scottish, 2 of them in Texas currently, 1 in California, and there's going to be a lot of shit talking. I can already feel it. I can already feel it. But to introduce everybody, over here on my right, I have Irene, who's here from Austin, and she works with Edgerington, and they're the importers of Highland Park 12, which many of you know from this past month. To my left, I have David Blackmore, who is the global brand ambassador for both Glenmorangie and for Ardbeg. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, very good. And it is Glenmorangie, the only word that rhymes with orange, correct?
It's absolutely true, yes.
Okay. Okay. And then right here on the other side, I have Johnnie Mundell, who's dialing in from Hermosa Beach, California, as you can tell from his Scottish tan. And and he actually, strangely enough, is a Scot that's from just outside of Glasgow, but he's in a hammock in California. He used to actually run the West Coast for the Japanese program for Suntory, and now is in charge of Maker's Mark, because they're like, who better to start the discussion on bourbon than a Scotsman?
And he seems to be drinking a glass of milk right now.
I'm going to go, is it a pina colada or is it a glass of milk?
No, it's a glass of milk. Pina colada is far too much effort for a happy hour.
Fantastic, good. What I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to post into the chat everybody's information, so that you guys want to keep track of these crazy kids, you can do that. And also, please keep in mind that throughout our happy hour, if you have any questions, please submit them through the Zoom chat, and hopefully we'll be able to catch everyone. But we're going to dive right in, because we've got folks that are waiting and thirsty. Our first segment for today is what I like to call Ron versus Ron, East versus West, Old World versus New Frontier. So as those of you saw on in our Facebook group, you saw that we had Ron Swanson and Ron Burgundy together. And I find that the 2 Rons have different ways of appreciating Scotch whiskey. Of course, they both love Scotch, but I feel like Ron Burgundy is more of a day drinker, partier, and Ron Swanson is more of like a calm, collected sipper of things that have had age on them. He might not be willing to go cocktails unless those cocktails were egg white cocktails, because he does love bacon and eggs. So that might be a way to tempt him into the world of cocktails. But we also have, we have 2 Scotsmen, 1 living in Texas, 1 in California. And then we have Irene, who has spent the last several years working with a huge portfolio of Scotch whiskeys and is now focusing specifically on Highland Park. So being a bartender herself, has a lot of experience in terms of on-premise and bars, and we'll be able to talk more about cocktails. What I want to do is I want to dive in right away with David. And David, I'd love for you to talk about your take on this sort of Ron versus Ron concept, and maybe you can talk about how important It is to introduce Scotch not only as a category, but eventually into cocktails. And then we'll have Johnnie argue with you because he never drinks cocktails.
So yeah, thanks, Danny. I think the first observation I'd make is that neither of the Rons are clearly Scottish, because why choose between day drinking and evening drinking if you're Scottish? It's all the time, 24/7. Only joking, maybe.
They make an excellent point.
Yes. So I'm torn here, to be honest. I love the fact that Scotch whiskey can be anything to anybody. That's really where I'm probably going with this. If it's me, probably over the last God knows how many years that I've been either a Scotch whiskey fan or in the industry, I've probably had more memorable moments. If it's a kind of bar moment, as the kind of end of the night after party, quiet, a bit more kind of considered. But at the same time, all those moments back in Scotland, Ardbeg Distillery or Glenmorangie Distillery, they would class clearly as day drinking, and those are the real memories. Those are the kind of the memories that bring the passion about whiskey back, flooding back even all these years later. So I'm really torn. Which one would I go with? If I had to say, no, I can't. I don't know. Johnnie, what do you think? Day drinking or quiet drinking in the evening?
I would say for me, question's flawed because it starts off with the opinion of two elderly white males, and I thought we were trying to get away from that. So
I thought so too, but I did invite the two of you to talk here, so obviously I'm sticking with the
Oh, hey, I am just really enjoying watching you swing along in a hammock there. This is amazing. I would just go for day drinking then for you. And I agree. I also like more of a highball situation during lunch, that type of thing, and then sort of be like more of a country song and end my night with a little glass of wine.
And you don't, it's not really a matter of having to choose. It's much more like, and because the overarching conversation is about summer Scotch too, it's about the concept of allowing people to enjoy this category in a way that they may not have thought about before. So, our subscribers run the gamut. We have people with a ton of cocktail experience, a ton of spirit experience, and people who have none, who are coming to the group to learn, right? And to experience and to taste new things. And that's half the fun. So
on that note, I think that view behind you, if you get an opportunity to go to Scotland, the people who have not been or are not there currently, having a nice hike. And I have, with our mutual friend, Georgie Bell, she is an animal. She likes to go on a leisurely walk, and it is an intense hike where I'm basically dying at the end, and took us to an incredible reward at the Copper Dog, incredible iconic bar in Speyside. Has anyone been there in the chat or anywhere, or anybody else?
Where is it exactly?
So it's in the town of Craigellachie. So it's got, this beautiful view, and I don't know how long we walked or how high we went, but it kind of reminds me of how gorgeous it was. Worth the hike up the mountain, or the hill, as Georgie liked to say. So
did some flasks magically appear once you got to your destination?
Well, once we got to the top, yes, she was pouring some whiskey, and then when we got to the bottom, we went to Copper Dog and had some drams and some beers. So it was that type of day drinking is amazing. But I also think that I personally love creating cocktails, and thinking about a long drink with Scotch is really fun. I love I've been making a cocktail actually really similar to the one that you guys are in the box this time, but it has less of less culture than the one that you guys have. It's a little bit less complicated, but my cocktail with Highland Park 12 is sort of a play on a Paloma and a sour sort of mixed together.
Right. What's the recipe? I'll actually type it right here into the chat.
Sure, really, really easy. 1.5 ounces if you're feeling like making it the right way, or 2 ounces if you are just feeling a little bit extra. Half ounce of everything else, half ounce of honey syrup, half ounce lime juice, half ounce pineapple juice. Shake that, pour it over ice, and then top it with grapefruit soda. And you could even put a little salt in the drink, or put some just around the edge.
And this is tall Collins. Is it built, or do you shake and add the soda and strain?
So you add 1.5 ounces of Highland Park, half ounce of honey simple, everything else. Shake that, strain it, top it with grapefruit soda.
How does that taste with Aberfeldy?
I haven't tried it with Aberfeldy, but I think with Aberfeldy, I really liked an iced tea with honey and Aberfeldy. It was super refreshing because Aberfeldy has those honeyed notes, so just elevating those a little bit. But I kind of went the salty sort of tropical island vibes and sort of turned that in that way. Yeah.
Okay, so you said 1.5 to 2 ounces Highland Park 12, half ounce honey syrup, half ounce lime, half ounce pineapple, shake, strain, top with grapefruit soda, pinch of salt.
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm gonna post that so people can see that. Yeah, it's one of those things where, Johnnie, having spent time working with House of Centauri, that it became, the highball just became this focus for the brand. Because what a great way to introduce people to a category that they really don't understand or don't have experience with, than like something light, refreshing, effervescent.
I've got a lot of experience with like whiskey +1, and I find it a little overwhelming to think about balancing any more than 2 ingredients. So I have a whole list of things I really enjoy mixing with Scotch, and the highball tops that list. I got the current job that I'm in allegedly because I did an hour-long seminar on bubbly water, and my hiring manager for this role witnessed it and said if I could make bubbly water sound interesting, then I was the guy for the job. So
I agree.
I'm obsessed with there's different whiskeys with different types of carbonation. I think one of the whiskeys we're gonna get to try today, I recently got to try the Glenmorangie X, is it, David, that you've got in the basket today?
That's it, yeah.
I got to try that in a highball, super bubbly water. And I actually felt, and this is not a knock on the beverage, I felt that a little bit of grain whiskey would have helped the viscosity of the carbonation. So I'm obsessed with texture and mouthfeel, but I can't handle more than this. The whiskey is already so complex for me. I don't have the palate or the experience to be able to comprehend multiples of ingredients and what that might do. I'm just beginning my journey with focusing on a +1, and that, it started with vodka Red Bull, and it's taken me all the way to oyster brine and Bowmore. And sincerely, I like a glass of milk with some whiskey in it. That's my nighttime drink. So
is that what you're drinking right now? It has whiskey in there?
What other way would you drink milk?
I don't drink milk. I don't know.
Strange combination that we had recently. I had a friend over, and I had just been testing out the new yuzu lime from Fever Tree, and I had some of the Kregelki 13. And I was like, you know what? Why not? It was afternoon, and it's an unbelievable combination, like an unreal combination. I mean, I would say if you guys have your hands on either low to no sugar sodas, it's a really great way to test things out. Yeah, David wrote that he's drinking a highball right now with the Glenmo X and Topo Chico, which Topo Chico is great, like the minerality and the actual effervescence, like the bubbles, not just because they're glass bottles, and I think especially in Texas where the two of you are. It's so ubiquitous, but it's because of the fact that it actually is tasty and has really great bubbles.
Yeah, it's all the kind of the salt content that dissolved. This tasty one. What's he saying?
Sorry.
I would have said the salt content, and that would really help the Glenmore.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've always Lumsden, our master distiller, has always talked about the French water Badois, which is extra salty and minerally, not always carbonated. Of course, you get the still version as well, but it being very similar in mineral content to our actual source water. So maybe there's a bit of kind of full circle there. There's more minerally waters working well with Glenmore.
So a good segue into our next section, actually, the timing is on is perfect, is, again, this can be in terms of cocktails or in terms of just sipping, but what does summer Scotch mean to you? So I really want to have Irene start us off, specifically to tell us some of your favorite Scotch cocktails from your past several years, working with a large portfolio of single malts and blends, but and why it's a misnomer that Scotch can only be relegated to dark, wintry flavors and pairings.
Sure. I did read a nice article about Glenmorangie X, some cocktails on that. So that's kind of cool, David. We can talk more about that one. But on the note of Craigellachie, something that is crazy delicious is fresh squeezed apple juice with a super body viscous Scotch that tastes amazing, and that's just a 2-ingredient cocktail. I think there's a way to think about cocktails in kind of switching up something that you are traditionally used to having, like an old fashioned, but switch it over to Scotch. With Aberfeldy, like we talked about, honey is great. I've been messing around a lot with different types of cocktails for Highland Park and really kind of vibing off that idea. So at Highland Park, the air and the water comes up from the Gulf Coast, and then on the other side we've got the Northern Sea, and so because of that, it creates this treeless environment, and the peat actually has a floral note to it. And so that peat comes from, we prepare it and all that at the distillery, at the distillery in the Orkney Islands. And we do a lot of aging there as well. Can't do it all there because that's a bad bet on all of your whiskey, but quite a bit of it is aged there. So that's going to give it a really beautiful kind of a floral smoke note, and it's aged in sherry. So I've been taking that idea with the salinity coming through, putting a little bit of salt in a cocktail, putting something a little bit more viscous like that pineapple. Or, I mean, you can make it super simple. Just do, great bubbly water with maybe a tasting note that you really like, and finding some bitters that sort of match that. For instance, say a highball with Highland Park and a dash of like charred grapefruit, and then zest a grapefruit instead of a lemon. That can be fun. So it can be as simple as you want as far as a highball or drinking it neat, or some, a couple of ice cubes, God forbid. Hey, we are whiskey fans for all, right? Just drink it how you like it, I guess is the end of that story.
Well, the drink it how you like it is really what the whole concept is about. Summer Scotch is not just for the season. It's also to talk about how great Scotch can be with things that we associate with summer, like tropical or spicy, kind of like the Como la Mujer cocktail that Anna made is both. It's tropical and it's spicy, and it's just one of those things that I think a lot of people find to be a surprise when they throw it together with something like a single malt. It sort of takes them in another direction that they didn't think was possible through Scotch. And again, the warm summer months, another way that they wouldn't normally think about Scotch.
And of course, if anyone's actually has dialed in from Scotland, another thing you would associate with summer months is sideways driving rain and and mosquitoes, which is what Scotland is known for, midges. But anyway, I'm only joking. But yes.
For any of you that ever have trouble naming cocktails, if you ever want to do a Scotch cocktail that's called Sideways Rain.
Sideways Rain, there you
go. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think it would work quite nicely.
Or actually the Mosquito, which is a classic, which is a Scotch mojito.
Oh my gosh, that's adorable.
Which worked really well with Glenmorangie Original. That was not an intended segue, but it worked out nicely nonetheless. But yeah, a mojito with Glenmorangie Original, I've always found, being nothing against other spirits, drink them frequently, apart from vodka, don't drink that very often personally. But anyway, other than that, I'm an equal opportunities spirits drinker, but I've always found something like Glenmorangie Original is in something like as a replacement in a mojito, allows enough of the kind of mojito-ness to come through, if you like, but leaves more of a finish. You get a longer finish to the drink, I find, than a white rum for sure. So I like that.
Well, I mean, just in general, if you were to do a mojito with an aged rum, you're already going to end up with more texture, more tannins. Depending, of course, on the rum, but than you would with the white rum. But I mean, one of my favorites. You and I talked about this last week. One of my favorites is the Ardbeg Daiquiri. It's not a combination that people would think. They wouldn't think that drink with Scotch whiskey, and they definitely wouldn't think that drink with peat. It's not a concept that people think of, and it's amazing. It's delicious.
You've got to up it one level more and make the Ardbeg Hemingway, which I believe is just a double shot daiquiri, right? Is that right? I think. Am I right there? I might be totally wrong. But.
We can. I mean, people in this group can try the Ardbeg Hemingway and Nika. We already have a cocktail that's a spin on the Hemingway that has Naranja Agria. It has the bitter orange syrup. That's super interesting. It was Jonathan Boren and Marshall Altier made that drink. Outstanding cocktail. I bet it would be pretty fantastic with a peaty Scotch. We'll have to try that out.
Nice.
By the way, we got some questions from folks who were asking about the Summer Scotch 2 single recipe cocktail kits. And so those were just released day before yesterday. So I'm going to put that into the chat as well. That's all the stuff in the Make More store having to do with Summer Scotch 2. And those are really fun because a lot of folks who joined us a little bit later and who missed out on the actual subscription box, unfortunately, can still go back and grab the single recipe kits, which is really fun because they get to experiment still with some of these flavors that, again, they wouldn't normally think of when it comes to Scotch whiskey. David, in your experience, what have been some of the more interesting cocktails that people have made using Glenmorangie in your travels, or things that stood out as being not your typical Scotch cocktail, not a Rob Roy, not an old fashioned, something that would not necessarily fit summer, but something that you sort of blew you away in terms of, oh, I never really thought of Scotch in a cocktail that way.
Don't say chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk. Well, not far off. That would be an interesting one. One of my last international trips before all the craziness of COVID and lockdown happened was to Sydney for a Glenmorangie Signet pop-up event. And they had a couple of interesting cocktails there. And at the time, and I don't know if it's still the case, there was a very surprising trend in Australia at the time. Everyone was absolutely crazy for espresso martinis. I think there's been a bit of a hit of that in the States as well. But when I went to Australia in 2019, it was just all people were drinking. So a very expensive cocktail was a Signet-based espresso martini, which was
Wow.
kind of shocking. It worked pretty well. That was interesting. And then Danny, my fellow Scotsman here might have tipped me off for this, but the other cocktail that I'm going to mention is my wedding day cocktail, which was a Glenmorangie, Quinta Ruban, Blood and Sand, your favorite.
How did you know?
And I will fight anyone who disparages the name of a Blood and Sand. You're just not making it right.
So I'm with you. I'm not against the cocktail. It can be good. In fact, there's a product that Combier came out with a number of years ago that was a cherry liqueur. I think most of the thing that I don't like about that cocktail is the combination of the Scotch they choose and the OJ and the hearing. Hearing can be really viscous and especially with like OJ that's not natural, it's too sweet.
You gotta have freshly squeezed blood orange juice, and you gotta have just the right amount of hearing, and you gotta have a whiskey that already has kind of dark chocolate and cherry notes in it. And it's
interesting. What is your spec so I can share it with everybody?
Honestly, I off the top of my head, I'm like Johnny. I'm not a bartender, mixologist, expert in any way. I can get it to you, but
okay.
I can tell you who made it at my cocktail. I'll let you know later.
Okay.
At my wedding, I can tell you who made the cocktail. So
that would be great. I mean, I would love to get a version that people can try because it's a classic for a reason, and when it's well balanced, it's incredible.
Honestly, I've kind of loved the fact that in the last few years it's gone so far out of fashion and it's become almost the butt of bartender jokes. And I'm like, yes, I found my cocktail.
just to be an outsider, so that you
every single Scotsman is born with a sort of membership to the Contrarian Club, I think, basically.
Congratulations. Honestly. Yeah, and it also depends. There's a lot of people that will use that sort of like really cheap orange liqueur instead of fresh juice.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I've had many terrible Blood and Sands, but then you can have a terrible any cocktail.
True. I mean, I think, and that's one of the other things is when people they're experimenting in cocktails with a spirit category that's already not really known for cocktails. It's one of those things that can put them off. So there was a gentleman here in our group that he commented also that he loves Signet, but he said that where did you write that, David? You posted something about a cocktail that you like. Hold on a second. I need to find it. It already scrolled past. Oh, that's funny. Actually, Paul wrote Morangy Milk Punch, which is actually a pretty good title. I like that. You might have to.
Milk Punch gonna work on it.
Yeah, I feel like Johnny's already having one right now, which is great.
That sounds delicious. Yes.
Some delivered.
That could go quite well. But yeah, it's something that can be really fun, but people do get turned off from a category sometimes because of a bad drink. And one of the great things about this particular the Summer Scotch 2 box that I've liked is that so many people have said, I don't normally like Scotch whiskey, but I love this cocktail. I love these cocktails. And then they pull away and they try it just by itself. And they're like, oh, actually, this is not what I remember Scotch whiskey being like. Because a lot of times they don't like this sort of like iodine. They don't like Isla. That might be one of the things that pushes people in the wrong direction. But a Highland honey, the apple juice thing Irene was talking about.
Yeah.
The way that I describe Speyside for the most part is adult apple juice. So people are trying to like get what's that thing on the nose, what's that thing that feels familiar? It's juice box apple juice. So if like any of you are you've got your get a little snifter, and I've got my Glenlivet snifter right here, or my Glencairn, and it's a great way to really smell and experience a Speyside is by getting the like maybe a little bit of honey, which comes through a lot in the Aberfeldy, for example, but a little bit of honey, and then you've got that juice box apple juice. It's pretty great.
Love it.
As well as the Aberfeldy, there's a famous whiskey educator that actually, one of David's mentors is a guy called Robin Cooper.
Yep.
And taught him a lot. He works on a brand called Glen Grant, which, like the Aberfeldy, is very appley.
Great whiskey.
It's amazing for me the way you can just with a simple push really magnify something that's inherent in the whiskey. And
you mentioned the breadth and width of the experience you can have with the Bowmore. With Ardbeg, for example, my old colleague Keith Waldbauer, we were playing around with Ardbeg and we were doing drops, and that thing is a beast, and we called it a beast before Wee Beastie even came out, David. And what's really interesting about doing that sort of water drop test is Ardbeg will suddenly go chamomile. It'll go light, feminine, floral. It's so interesting and not what you would think in terms of, the monster that is any sort of like Islay whiskey.
One of the weird experiences for me is one of my favorite, and this is when we're talking about day drinking versus kind of evening drinking, it was actually in my mind about one of the best day drinking experiences, and it's just standing on the old pier at Ardbeg Distillery with a nosing glass with Ardbeg 10 in it. And if you're on a typical day, summer or winter, there'll be a good old breeze blowing at to say the least. And when you nose that glass, when you take it out of the visitor center, yeah, smells like Ardbeg right in your face. Walk down to the pier, nose it again, and all the smoke's gone. It's chamomile and honey and lime juice and a bit of black currant every now and then, and there's no smoke there at all. And it's the weirdest experience. And then you drink it, and there's some of that. It's almost kind of like the soot and coal dust element that hits Ardbeg sometimes, a little bit of that's kind of reminiscent of Lafroig a bit. But then it's gone again when you're standing outside. It's back to the kind of chamomile, honey, lime juice, black currant notes. It's one of the funkiest. I've said for years to anyone within the company that Ardbeg for me, well, all whiskey is kind of an outdoor drinking experience. It smells and tastes better outdoors, but Ardbeg takes that to the nth degree. It's an outdoor whiskey.
One of the questions we got in the chat, actually, David, this is somewhat related to what you were talking about before, is about saline and about do you recommend using a saline solution when tasting Scotch whiskey? This is not really related to cocktails so much, except for the fact that we've used saline for a lot of the cocktails, and folks have started experimenting with it. But do you ever do that when you're doing tastings with people?
No, I don't.
I think it kind of evolved down the chat into messing around with it for cocktails, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I thought they were asking about saline solution. Oh, you're talking about like in Scotch cocktails. I thought it because it came through at a time we were talking about doing drops of water for tasting
yeah.
Having said that, it's not a bad idea to experiment with that, because salt is known to be something that kind of activates taste buds and accentuates flavors. So, maybe it's way back in the dark ages, we were always told, between whiskeys, when you're doing a tasting, have a little bit of oatcake. And I always thought that was a bit bizarre even then, but maybe it's that saltiness actually that's part of it. It's not just a palate cleanser. Maybe it's a palate activator as well. So
one of the things that you had mentioned when we talked last week, David, was about Scotch and Citrus, and you said that there's an interesting story in terms of specifically lemon with Glenmorangie.
Yeah, kind of random thing that back in the day, after So our founding father, and all the paperwork and all the sort of history books and everything it's all about William Matheson, who started the distillery in 1843. Okay, kind of, but this was kind of the Victorian era, and it was really William and his wife Anne Matheson that started the distillery. And sadly, William, within 20 years of owning Glenmorangie, passed away. And then nobody has talked about this. Anne is the one that ran the distillery. She's the one think about this, a woman in the north of Scotland in the Victorian era. She had 10 kids and she was successfully running a distillery to the point where she brought in all sorts of outside investors to rebuild the distillery, put in these tall stills that we always talk about. And they expanded the company beyond just distilling. And they actually owned in the town of Tain, where we're located, actually right in the center of the town of Tain, they owned a lemonade factory. Now, bizarrest thing ever. Imagine, because we don't grow lemons in Scotland. They must have been importing lemons to Tain to make lemonade. But yeah, the Glenmorangie company once also had a lemonade factory. Bizarre.
So that's where we got the expression, when life gives you Scotch whiskey, make lemonade.
Make lemonade, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. That's perfect. That is a fairly random piece of information.
Well, we're going to talk about founders. So 1846, you said?
1843, but officially, but 17 something on a kind of dodgy illicit distilling.
Okay, so illicit distilling, right? So I was really concerned because we're talking about, when I was learning about Highland Park, it was created in 1798, but they were talking about the tax people. Mm-hmm. So I said to my friend Holly Sidewine, who knows so much about Scotch, it blows my mind. So how come, because the Excise Act didn't come to fruition until 1823, why were they worried about taxes? So her answer was, she said, you could ask other people about this, so I'm curious what you guys think. But she said, because before that Excise Act came to fruition, they were illicitly distilling, and then the taxes were so high that that's why no one paid their taxes. And then in 1823, that's when it made it a lot easier and accessible to actually have a legitimate distillery. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact dates of it, because there were several different things passed in terms of taxes, but I think that was the one where it was about the size of the still and giving tax breaks for bigger stills, right, Johnny?
And again, we're talking about the size of our stills and whose distillery was the illegalist.
And, no, they're all illicit, really, and that's why I mentioned it.
They were all illegal. That's what's great about it.
Irene, you're being sucked into his world, okay? Yeah. This is a new whiskey generation. And just because a pompous guy from Edinburgh happens to live in Texas is seducing you into this space, you are the future. I need you to think forward thinking. We don't care how big your still is, David. And we don't care if you're illegally distilling for a certain point.
Back to talking about whiskey. Paul, that looks like some particularly delicious looking Highland Park.
Oh yeah, it's the batch from Binny's in Chicago. That's so dark.
Is there?
The best man at my wedding, my best mate, Philip Thorfinn Cooper, is from Stromness, and his dad was head of Stromness Academy. So I've got some wee links to Orkney. The only time I've been to Orkney was when I was still a student, and I went up there with Phil to go see the place. And I'm afraid to say I had no interest in whiskey at all and didn't visit either distillery, which was a big mistake. But we did spend a lot of time playing pool in the various pubs in Stromness till about 4 a.m, which was great fun.
You're basically a local. That's how it goes.
Yeah, the trouble is, if you stay in the pool halls of Stromness till about 4 a.m, you then have to avoid getting in a fight, and it's difficult. It's to say.
Also something that makes you automatically a local.
I've
No,
I've had
We were
no,
hanging out with firefighters in Scotland, and I was surprised they were all drinking Jack Daniels.
yeah, that's very normal. That and Smirnoff.
it's a huge evolution. Typically, it was like Bacardi Breezers or Smirnoff, like any sugary pop type alcohol. But it's no surprise that a bunch of Scottish firefighters paid for your drinks. Equally, it's no surprise that David was punched in a bar in Stronhaven. He has a very punchable face.
I was waiting for you to do that. There we go. See, this has been the underlying theme.
I've never.
For those of you who are wondering what the
Well, I've
East
never
Coast
been
West
punched in
Coast
any-
part of this happy hour was about, here you have it. It's all laid out in front of you. I do have an actual question, but David, you can't read it off your screen. I'm just going to put it out there. Can you explain to us, because all this stuff is very easy to find online. I would like to hear from you how the Glenmorangie X came into being, and like, you know, what was the design in coming up with a cocktail and coming up with a cocktail single malt.
Okay.
Because it was a collaboration, correct? Like collaboration with bartenders.
Yeah, it was a collaboration, and we haven't actually kind of officially said who the bartenders were that we collaborated with. But I know that Bill Lumsden worked pretty closely with the team from Bramble Bar in Edinburgh. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that, but I know that they worked with them and others on developing X. And the idea was simply, you know, over the years, particularly coming to the States over the last decade or so, and certainly the times I've hung out in London with Bill as well, we've seen the change. We've all seen the change from being in the whiskey industry when I started in the dark ages, 2005 in the States and 2002 in Scotland, where, you know, it was a glass of whiskey and that's how you got it. And now this, you know, there was no resurgence of the kind of cocktail scene, whatever you want to see it. And I've certainly learned a lot. I'm a bit like Johnnie. I'm kind of on the fence a bit about how I like to drink my whiskey. I think overall prefer to drink my whiskey in a glass. I like getting the complexities of the whiskey, but I've enjoyed seeing the creativity and just the standards raised in bars. And Lumsden certainly, you know, wherever we go and wherever he goes in the world, these kind of experiences inspire him. So the idea was, why not make a single malt that's intentionally created? Yes, you can drink it neat and it's great, but we've actually had our primary thought process when it comes to the flavor profile tuned into how will it work in a cocktail. The kind of differentiation between original and X is that they're both still, as you said, kind of lighter single malts in their style, but X has a little bit more robustness. And to quote Lumsden, what he kind of, the soundbite nugget is chocolate coated ginger, which is not, you know, kind of what I do at the weekends. But that's the kind of tasting notes. See, there you go, Johnnie. Told you I'd do it.
Yeah. He opened that one right up for you. You know, for those of you who like join us in the happy hour often, you know that we always finish with, you know, the last thing we talk about as part of the panel is the status of the hospitality industry. So this is something that's been obviously going up and down and so crazy over the past, you know, couple of months, much less the past, you know, year and a half. And so what I'd really love, since, you know, Irene, you're probably spending the most time on premise than these other two gentlemen who don't leave their hammocks very often. I'm really curious as to, you know, what's one really great silver lining that you've seen in a bar in your area, like something very cool that they've done, some way that their community has reached out to them and done something positive for their staff. Sort of open question, but one really great positive thing that you've seen happen in the market right now?
Yeah, I feel like I had so many of these conversations like, months ago, and being in Texas where we're just pretty much still open. We never we did shut down, but not quite. I mean, we all got COVID. Um, but I would say, I think just seeing the people that are really passionate about the industry, bartenders, just doing whatever it takes to, encourage and uplift each other and just sort of have each other's back about it. And then, being on the brand side, I think, we all sort of banded together and did what we could as well. And especially when we weren't worried about the cocktail placement or anything like that, because it wasn't going to happen, right? Just real, like, I think the biggest thing was that we're all people and we just have a passion for, customers and experiences, and also the spirit we're drinking. I mean, you can go to the store and buy these bottles we're talking about, but you want to sit down and have that experience when you go to a bar, just like we all know, right? But really being able to show up for everybody, no matter if that's the, helping out with the back of the house, the, the hostesses, all of it. And it's been a challenge, it's like we had these tastemaker awards last week, and to see more than half the awards for the back of the house type people not be able to show up because they're at work, that's what people, I think, like general consumers need to realize is what's really going on behind the scenes, and everybody's working so hard to make them have a great experience. So I think the little that we can do as brand people is try to make the bartenders in the trade have a good experience. And I think the challenge is figuring out how to do that.
I think that was so well spoken that I'm really not going to ask either of the gentlemen to pitch in, because there's no way that they could either top it or honestly have anything relevant to say. Am I right?
I have something to say, actually. Not to top it. To build on it, I think you framed it up beautifully, Irene, and I'll be a little more blunt. I think there's a hell of a lot people can do, and it's have patience.
True. You're talking about guests.
Yep. Yeah. I have seen a lot, like all of us. There are green shoots. Danny, you're across in Oakland. I was in San Francisco a month ago, and San Francisco is a city that's really struggled. The talent has to find and own a piece of the bar culture in that city for anybody is a challenge. You got to slog it out. So maybe house prices will become more accessible. I met a couple of people that inspired me. One was a bar back, the other one was a server in a bar and a restaurant, and they both went out of their way, not knowing I'm in the industry, to give me a really amazing experience. I think to build on Irene, we can ask a hell of a lot more of our fellow humans to be patient. I have a place down the road that my friend owns. He's been his own line cook for 5 months. He's barely seen his wife and his children. And if things are not up to the standards that you expect, what the hell is wrong with what you expect?
Exactly.
Be patient. We're working to get things back open as quickly as we can.
Absolutely.
If I would add one thing, I would say I'm hoping one of the things we see come out of this as well is I think before the pandemic, I had seen very much a disconnect, particularly between the very senior brass within the wine and spirits industry, not really understanding the bar industry at all. And those of us in between that worked in the industry, to a varying degree, did understand the spirits and wine industry. Sorry, did understand the bar world, but the top brass didn't. And I think with some of the responses that we saw from the major companies, that came ultimately from all of us shouting uphill to the top brass, I think maybe the penny dropped a bit last year, and it certainly dropped with that level of management that will be the next CEOs in the industry. So I'm hopeful that moving forward, there'll be a much better understanding from the very top level of the spirits industry, particularly, of how important the bar industry is.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The leadership flip's going to happen because there were a lot of people who left and went elsewhere, and the areas that were eliminated within brand side, supplier side in particular, was a lot of that leadership. So that's a very good point.
Generational change and a shift in perception and understanding as well. So
what you're saying is, back to what Johnnie was saying earlier, that Irene should not listen to a word you say because she's moving forward and you're one of the old dogs. Is that correct?
I'm in agreement.
I'm starting a campaign. I think Glenmorangie as a brand would double their business if they made David CEO.
That's no. We get
Listen, David, this is recorded for posterity. So later you're going to be able to go to YouTube and select the actual minute and second this played and just send that clip to a bunch of people, okay?
Look, I remember starting out in this business, and it wasn't David, but it was a couple of our dear friends. There is a camaraderie, and David and I rib each other hard. I don't know what you thought there, Irene, what that smirk was about, but it was a perfectly innocent remark. Ribbing is teasing someone. I don't know where your mind is going.
Thank you.
Dude, but I went through a really tough time, like most of us. David was one of the people to consistently reach out and check I was doing okay. He has a lot of rough edges. But he has a lot of experience through his many failures. He would make a great CEO. I think failures are something that we should get really open about celebrating. I ask it as an interview question now.
I like that, actually.
Tell me, I don't want to see your resume. Tell me what you failed at and what you learned from that. And Danny, you know that too. You failed at 100 things, and you're the man
today. Like 100 things today.
I mean, like just getting the run a show to me on time, so I was prepared for the call.
Listen,
so hang on.
The
guy who's telling you that you failed at getting him the run of show, so he was prepared for the call, is clearly not prepared for the.
He's not prepared. It wouldn't have mattered. I could have gotten it to him last
on
July.
their questions.
Yeah,
that's the pot.
By the way,
Little Black.
this is an excellent. Speaking of being prepared, David, if you would be so kind. We are now coming to the trivia section of the evening. I think that you should ask question number 2, your second question. I think that should be
my questions. Hold on.
I did.
While he looks, I think if I could say one more thing before we move on is I think it's really important on that note of the people that are, you know, in the office chairs, but those types of people really realizing that the perspective of the boots on the street is important. And I think that really became prevalent in this last year and a half or so, if you guys will agree with me, but
100%.
Kind of realize those people that are listening.
100%.
By the way, speaking of listening and paying attention, Paul has already answered the question. It is an answer to the wrong question, but I do appreciate the fact that he wrote answer rhymes with orange. No.
I have a question for Paul, though. What was that bottle you were showing there? The very dark whiskey bottle you just showed. What is that? Oh, it's the Highland Park again. I thought you had something else. For some reason, I thought you had this, and I was wrong. This is a weird and wacky thing.
What is that one, David?
This is a rarity. This is an independent bottling of Glenmorangie that is fully Oloroso sherry cask matured. And it's actually nothing that we would do, and it's not very balanced, particularly, but it's fun, you know. Genuinely, I thought you had. I saw the back of the bottle, and I thought you had. What's that? That's
what's that one?
Anyway.
Oh, Kilcran, the Campbelltown. I got it. Yeah, still.
Nice. So question. You want question number 2?
Yes, ask the question. And so, guys, again, it's whoever answers it correctly in the chat first.
Okay.
So me and Johnnie are not allowed to guess.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
no, I didn't submit any questions. I'm guessing. Irene, I'm in.
Johnnie can answer, but he'll never get them right. It's fine.
Okay.
Go for it, David.
Oh, the owners of Glenmorangie Distillery also ran a lemonade factory in the Victorian era. But in what town was it located?
Oh,
boom. Kylene got it. Boom, that was fast. Kylene got it. Wow, that was really quick. I don't even know if you had finished the question yet.
Can we get a spelling check? Did she spell it right?
She did.
Well, the modern day spelling of Tain is T-A-I-N, but the medieval spelling is T-A-Y-N-E. So,
well, okay. Sorry, Kylene, it's all going into the garbage now. I'm sorry. It's all over. Perfect.
So, you know, the reason Johnnie asks is he remembers the original spelling.
Yes, it is true. Okay. Irene, you should ask question. You know what? I think you should do a 2-parter. I think you should do questions number 1 and 2. 3 is going to be a little hard.
Okay. So just ask one question and then the next one?
Yeah, but you're going to do one question and the next one, but you guys have to answer the 2 together. So both of the answers together. So wait until she asks the second one. And then here we go.
Okay, in the beginning of this question, there is a little hint. If you're a Doggos fan, doggies, what's an iconic bar that sits in the town of Craigellachie? What's the name of that? Then, when did the Excise Act come to fruition?
Oh, Kylene, you can't win it again. Sorry.
Oh my God, I want to cheat off Kylene.
Okay, Paul got that one. That was good. Paul, congrats.
It's
okay,
my
you
husband.
guys are both out. You're out of the running now. Okay, perfect. That's good.
And she did a good job too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. She's on it today. Okay, Johnnie, you're gonna do obviously question number 1. This is a multiple choice.
Yep. Okay.
And
do not off memory, because you know that I didn't get the run of show. It never landed, but I can do it off memory. I need David though. David, can you tell me the origin of the term whiskey, starting back in medieval times, please?
I can't do that. Sorry, I don't know. You tell me.
Okay, Johnnie, do you want me to do it for you? I'd rather you read it.
So,
yeah, David, stop fucking around. Come on.
This is a trap. You're going to get me with something. I don't know why you're asking.
No. David, just play the game.
So the initial Latin eau de vie became uisce in Scots Gaelic and was shortened to uisce, which over time was anglicized to whiskey if you drink enough, supposedly. God knows if that's really true.
It's true. Thank you, David.
Well, he's giving you all the answers.
But the term Scotch was created in answer A, March 2020. Answer B, the year David Blackmore emigrated to the United States. Answer C was, I don't remember. Help me out there.
The 1970s when the marketing department invented age statements.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Thank you. And Irene, go with number 4 because I can't remember how I worded it either.
In 1872, when the U.S. government decided country of origin needed to be on the bottle.
Okay, so to recap, it's March last year during the pandemic with David Blackmore's emigration to the United States, closely related.
Well, Beth already got it.
There you go.
Yeah. And by the way, the original question was, whiskey and bullshit have gone together since A. So, which I really appreciated that question.
Hey, who's this Paul guy going blah 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 at me? I will find that boy. And
I like him. I like him a
I'm
lot.
gonna call Brett Petoni in a little minute, and he won't be able to buy any more allocated items out of Benny's.
It'll happen, Paul. So be careful.
The whiskey mafia strikes.
By the way, the bonus, Johnny's bonus question was, which presenter said the word Aberfeldy the most? And it's going to be Irene. Irene won that for
no,
sure.
I think it was Johnnie.
No, he said you had one little segment alone where you said it multiple times and you won the entire thing. There's no way we're going to catch up at that point.
Well, don't tell my current boss.
No, I will not. Don't worry. It's not like this gets
I said
recorded
Highland
and posted.
Irene, I disagree. It was I purposely said it many more times so that you would not win that one. But Danny is right. You had a machine gun Aberfeldy. But
was I talking about it? Which segment was I saying?
A little bit. You'll have to go back and watch it later at the end. And then
now I'm not going to, because that's embarrassing.
No, you were set up, Irene. It was, again, in the spirit of how Blackmore treated me when I started. If we're not making fun of you, we don't like you. So welcome to the party.
But Johnnie, I didn't talk to you for the first year because I didn't like. I mean, no shit at me.
So, guys, very briefly, for those that won, please make sure that you send a private message to the Shaker and Spoon handle over here in the chat, and send the email address that you use on your Shaker and Spoon account. Okay, so just send them a quick message and let them with the email address that you use for Shaker and Spoon account, and make sure that you remember whose question you got right. So send them your email address and be like, hey, I got Johnny's question or Irene's question or David's question. And with that, I want to thank you guys very much for joining us, everybody, both our panelists here and obviously like our Shaker and Spoon subscribers and our Shaker and Spoon family. It's always such a pleasure to have you all together, and of course the wonderful Scotsman from the far off lands of Dallas and Hermosa Beach. Always a pleasure. Irene, thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward to having all of you guys at somewhere at a bar so we can sit and have beverage together in person. We really look forward to that moment.
Yes, absolutely.
But for the time being, cheers, sláinte. Thank you guys so very much, and please keep enjoying, keep sharing, keep being creative, and stay healthy and well.
To milk.
Yes, to milk and scotch. Bye all. Have a great, great evening.
Cheers.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.